Monday to this week's live weekly warm-up. Today we are talking about how to avoid frustration by taking a break, also how to avoid burnout. This happens a lot when we're learning something new, where you can be digging into it, getting the hang of it. At first it feels really good because you're like, okay, yeah, I'm playing these notes, I'm sort of seeing where things are going, and then really quickly you get frustrated and get burned out because you're like, well, I was getting a lot better, but now it feels like I've hit the wall and I'm not making any progress anymore on this new thing that I'm learning. I emphasize the new part because this really does only happen with new things. There's a little benefit to doing it on things that you already know as well, but it's most helpful for brand new stuff that you're learning, and you'll find you hit the wall the hardest when it's something brand new that you're still sort of figuring out. So what the trick is to avoid that wall, or what to do when you hit the wall, is to take a break, which I know isn't the most exciting advice because you think like, okay, yeah, sure, take a break, go do something else, stop getting frustrated. That's great, but I need to learn this and I want to know how to do this. And that's what I'm here to practice, is to get this. So if I just take a break, then I'm not achieving what I came here to do. But there's actually some really interesting science about how taking a break actually does help you continue learning. So I don't know exactly what the study is, and I've sort of heard about it in some presentations and sort of in other platforms and conversations, and I've experienced it firsthand as well. But the research study, which again, I wish I had the link to it, but I haven't been able to find it. I haven't looked too hard, but if you know what this study is, feel free to put it in the chat. I would love to have the actual study. But what it was is they were taking scans of people's brains as they were learning something, and they found that when they were doing the practicing and actually learning the thing, there were parts of the brain lighting up and working on the thing. And then when they stopped, the brain was still doing it. And the brain actually was lighting up in the same places, but actually faster than when they were physically practicing it. Which goes to show that when we take a micro break like that, our brain is still processing the information and still letting it sink in. So it can be really, really effective and really powerful in your practice to do the tricky bit that you're working on, do those measures or two, then stop and pause for 10 to 30 seconds, and it'll start sinking in. The other big benefit of that too is sometimes when we're trying to learn something that's a little bit tricky, we do it and we're like, oh, that wasn't quite it. And then we do it again. Oh, that wasn't quite it. And then we do it again. Oh, that wasn't quite it. And then we start banging our head against the wall thinking like, if I just do it one more time, or I'm just going to keep doing this until I get it right. And we keep making little mistakes. And then we start letting those little mistakes sink in. And then we have to fix those little mistakes later. So it's really, really helpful and really effective to, instead of banging your head against the wall, getting frustrated, letting the mistakes sink in, take a little break. And in that little break, the stuff you're working on will be sinking in and the brain will be processing what you were working on. You'll get sort of a fresh start again, where you're not just stuck in the same loop of repeating the same mistakes, and then try it again. And then maybe take a little break again. Especially when you get it exactly the way that you want, then pause. That's often the case too, as we do a repetition and we're like, oh yes, I got it. Now I need to test myself and make sure that I can do it again to see if it's actually consistent. That's the best time to take a micro break. You do it, you got it, pause, let it sink in, let your brain keep encoding that and getting that information in there. Then go back and do it again. And hopefully it's great again. Then pause again, keep letting it sink in. And even though you're taking breaks and not physically practicing, it's actually going to have better results for you and go better for you the next time, because the brain is still processing it and still working it in, rather than keep putting in new information without giving the brain time to process it. So that's the power of micro breaks. There's also great power in macro breaks, or just a little bit longer breaks. Probably you've experienced this. I remember when I first learned Smoke on the Water on guitar when I was very young. I struggled with it. Like the first day was like really challenging. I was like, how do I coordinate? Like, what are my fingers doing? And then like the next day or after a day or two, it was like second nature, super duper easy. I could probably still play it on guitar, even though I haven't thought about it in a really, really long time. And it's because of the power of sleep. There's also really, really great studies that I don't have the exact links to, unfortunately, but great studies of people who were learning a new thing. And there was a few groups. One group worked on it, practiced it, and then had a night of sleep. The other group started learning it in the morning, practiced it, and even got like another practice session in the middle of the day. And then 12 hours later or whatever, tried it again. And they both had the same amount of time in between, but the group who slept did better than the group who got extra practice. So it's really fascinating that sleeping can actually, again, help our brain to sort of let things sink in, really get the information processed, and really get it encoded well so that we really, really know it. So taking a longer break or taking a day is really great too. So when it comes to learning something new, especially, this doesn't work quite as well when you're doing something you already know. That's a little bit different skill. That's the recall side of things. Whereas taking breaks when you're learning something new is the encoding side of things. But when you're learning something new and you're getting frustrated, like, oh, I should be able to do this. I've been practicing this for 30 minutes or an hour and still like not feeling great. Take micro breaks, especially after you get it right, to let that sink into your brain. And then trust that when you sleep on it and you have that little bit more time for your brain to process, it'll get easier. So the next day that you come to it, and the next day and the next day, it'll be easier. The one warning to this is it's not infinitely getting easier. Like I mentioned, I haven't practiced Smoke on the Water on the guitar in like years and years and years. So it's not going to be easy and automatic for me now, just because I've had years of sleep to let it sink in. The sort of rate of learning is the first day you're able to get to one level, you sort of have a peak. The next day, it's a little bit higher because you had that time to sleep on it. But if you don't practice it the next day, then the next time you sleep, it gets a little bit rusty. And then if you don't practice it again that day, the next time you sleep, it gets a little bit rustier, and so on and so forth. So you do still need to practice. This isn't saying like, just try something once and then sleep on it for a month and then it'll be great. Unfortunately, it's not that great. But if you're feeling frustrated learning something new today, trust that tomorrow it will be easier because your brain will have had more time to let it sink in, especially if you leave it off with a really good repetition. That's something that I do in my practice. Is when I'm learning something new, I make sure my last rep for the day is either at like a slower tempo or a smaller chunk or something like that to really get it perfect, so that the perfect rep is what's sinking into my brain over the night and getting in there for the next day. And then the next day it's easier. So that's my little bit of inspirational message for you today. Don't forget to fill out your template. You can go to the link in the description, quickstartclarinet.com/get started to download the template. This is what it looks like. So you can make it for yourself because it's really simple, really easy. The date for the week, the reflection of how things are going, your goal for this week, and then your plan for when you're actually going to practice. And then take that plan, put it in your calendar, set reminders, put it in your planner, do whatever you need to do to commit to those as appointments that you aren't going to miss, so that you make sure to get your practicing in, achieve what you want to achieve for this week, and just keep doing that day after day, week after week, sleeping, letting it sink in, and then over time you're going to be in a much better place with your playing. So go fill out that template. Have a fantastic week of practice. Don't get frustrated when new things that you're learning aren't going right away. Take some micro breaks, sleep on it, and it will come together. I hope that this was helpful, a little bit of inspiration for you. Go do it, go practice. Have a great week, and I will see you next week on the next Monday Music Motivation.